Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Victor Cho on. Victor has a very impressive career, to not say anything more grandiose, because he worked at various cool companies at least I find cool. Intuit, he started his own companies as well. Uh, he spent Kodak, the online division. We're going to talk about that. Worked at Wharton as well, and still does analytics at Wharton, advisory board member there, and as well was CEO of Evite. Is that how we pronounce it, Victor?
hmm
Evite? Okay.
Yep.
7 years there in LA. So very entertaining background. And his current company is into a field that very much catches my attention. And we're gonna talk about the feasibility of live AI edition, because Emovit is a stealth AI driven video communication company. This podcast is brought to you by podfire.com. That is my podcasting agency. If you want to start, scale, monetize a podcast, I can be your man. Podcasts are amazing if done right. They can generate clients, they can generate connections, they can generate neurons in your brain. And I'm here to help you monetize them, because most people give up on the podcasting game after podcast number 10, or even worse before, because they don't see any money come out from it. So I help putting out a conscious capitalist back end to these podcasts. By the way, conscious capitalism is going to be another of our topics today. Victor, welcome to the pod. Can you tell me a bit more about yourself and about what you're up to nowadays?
Charles, yeah, no, a pleasure. A pleasure. So no, I think you captured it. I'm a longtime tech CEO. My friends, when they want to jab me emotionally, they're like, "Hey, aren't you a tech bro?" And I'm like, "No, no, no. Tech bro has really bad connotations. I am someone who is passionate about technology ever since the 90s. I worked at Microsoft. This is where I cut my teeth in my career, and so have worked, you know, online since it started back in the 90s, and now shifting into AI. So range of companies all the way from big to small. You rattled off a couple. And you mentioned that kind of at the tail end. I think, at this point, I've gotten enough wisdom to realize there's more to life than just making big businesses and delivering technology. So everything that I do now has a filter of like, are we using this technology in a positive way for society? So, actually, even the last two CEO roles that I had, they were all around photos and relationships. The current one that I'm running is around communication. So I can wake up in the morning and feel good about going into the office because I'm like, oh, in the limit of success of this business, what happens, right? People are actually coming together or sharing emotion, building connection, that type of thing.
It's interesting, the etymology of word, because just yesterday I was thinking to change my LinkedIn pronouns to, instead of cold email dude, to cold email bro. And then I mean, dude also has like a humoristic facet, but yeah, bro is, yeah, negative connotation, but bro is like brother, right? And that's my meaning of it. It's that
Yeah.
I'm friendly, and we can be friends. But yeah, people definitely put a negative connotation on tech bro. I'm not sure if it's valid though. Also, it seems that it's mostly woke people that came up with that definition, because I do think that tech bros do have a positive impact on the world. Elon, Zuck, Bezos is not a tech bro. He's like too old, but yeah, I do think that like most of the people that are called tech bros are have a positive impact, and that we need them in society. Now that's controversial, because most people wouldn't agree with
Yeah.
that, and there is a quote unquote problem in the valley, in which there's a lot of men at the top, and they take pretty much all the space. They take all the oxygen in the room, and they silence their critics. And I guess that's also a problem in the corporate world, where we see that people sign NDAs, they can't talk, and so forth. So
Yeah.
where do you see a problem in the valley, most precisely, with these tech bros, quote unquote?
It's a great question. I would describe it in the following way, and I probably need to put some more thought into it. But my first inclination is one of the reasons tech bro has negative connotations is it tends to describe an executive who is, yes, they're passionate about technology. Yes, they want to build a big business, but they kind of have blinders on in terms of what they're doing, meaning they really do drink their own Kool-Aid and they believe like that they're the saviors of the world with their technology. And what they are lacking, and I see this across almost everyone that you mentioned, there are what I call second order effects of businesses that get created. I'll pick on Facebook just because it just got sued by I think 42 district attorneys in the United States for its ecosystem. And the nature of that suit was very simple. Basically said, hey, we think this experience is damaging our youth, and we think you Facebook had data, which it did, right? Letting you know that this was damaging to youth, and you kind of didn't do anything about it, right? You kind of was like, no, 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 technology is awesome, Facebook is awesome, as opposed to, in my opinion, in my strong opinion, what should happen, right? Companies should stand up and be accountable for those effects, for those second order effects. So I think my long answer is it's blinders. It's the fact that people view tech bros as just having blinders. Technology is not the solution for everything. Technology is just a tool to elevate our humanity, but it can also degrade our humanity if we don't pay very careful attention.
I agree with that. Um, the blinders thing, I think it's almost impossible not to succeed as a founder or a CEO if you're not convincing yourself of something. Now, there are some things you can convince yourself that are toxic for society. And if you're looking away from the data, and in the case of Facebook, I don't think it's only Facebook. I think it's like most social media, they do promote
Yes.
that toxicity out there,
Yes. Yep.
that like the most dramatic and hateful thing gets promoted on top. Why? Because it's
Yeah.
so shocking, right? It
Yeah.
generates these emotions in us to see, I don't know, someone beating an animal or someone fighting, like it really evokes these primal
Yes.
feeling in
Yes.
us. And I do think that we should somewhat downgrade that. I was listening to Elon's book, written by Walter Isaacson, and in Twitter they do downvote this content and anything that is really toxic for a society. But do you agree that if you're not convincing yourself of a reality, because if you think of something you can achieve it, that's like one of the greatest wonders of the human mind. Do you agree that if you don't do so, you can't like be highly successful in tech?
No, yeah, I think you absolutely have to have a vision or a purpose for your business that you're passionate about. And yeah, we'll take Facebook. Like the early purpose of Facebook still is an admirable purpose, right? It's to connect people that are not connected. So yeah, I completely agree. You have to fundamentally believe in your purpose. At the same time, that doesn't mean that you can be blind to the ripple effects of, right, what your business ecosystem, especially as it gets larger and larger, is creating. And that's the flaw that I see. Right? There are multiple stakeholders in every business, right? There's of course your shareholders, right, who own your company. There are your customers, right, who use your product, and they're your employees, right? Most businesses think about those three and they try to balance those three, which is hard enough, right? As a CEO, it's hard enough to balance all three stakeholders, but there really is what I call a fourth stakeholder in business, which is your societal footprint, your broader societal impact. And that is very clear in my mind. Like you need to balance all four of those. And that sometimes has trade-offs between, particularly on the shareholder side, right? Like if not even Facebook, if the social media market in aggregate were to stand up responsibly and say, you know what, maybe I'll make an example. Maybe this is really bad for young kids under 18 and we should like shut this off. And yes, that's going to have an aggregate impact to the financials of this market, but it's the right thing to do for the society. Like that's a conversation they should be having amongst themselves, which they're not really having. Like they kind of wait for regulation to come in and clamp them down, which is too late.
Right, because it seems that Zuck wanted to help the world with the Zuck and Chan initiative, Chan and Zuck initiative.
Yeah.
But it also seems that investors found the golden goose, and these were greedy investors, and Zuck was kind of stuck in that middle, trying to please everyone from the ad side of thing and the growth side of things. And we had Chamath Palihapitiya in the growth position. And if you listen to the All In Pod, the personality of Chamath, quite aggressive, thinker, and the kind of guy that would cut some corners, although I like Chamath.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard, these decisions, and yeah, sometimes as a leader, it's really hard to just decide to either fire off people or buy out an investor and so forth, especially when you're publicly listed. I want to
Yeah.
talk about ZapSpot. It's always fascinating to me to see companies that went through the dot-com boom and crash.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. That'll take me back.
So tell us about that one, because you scaled it pretty high, 22 employees, 3 million plus software application, 125 countries. How did that go for you? And what lessons did you learn from it?
Oh my God, no, yeah, you're gonna take me back in the time machine, which I love. So, yeah, 2 seconds of background. So right before ZapSpot, which was the first company I ever founded, I was at Microsoft for 7 years, and this was when Microsoft was going through its crazy growth curve and its first crazy growth curve right in the 90s. It's going through another reinvention, which is incredible, which I love. But I worked in that time at Microsoft. I worked in their what was called their consumer products group. So I got to see all of the data around who was using what software. And literally, the impetus of ZapSpot came from two things. It came, and this is going to sound stupid, but it was true. It came from seeing the data around solitaire, the little game. So early on, I don't even know. I don't even think solitaire is on Windows anymore. But early on in the 90s, like there was a very simple game called solitaire. And I remember looking at the data of this one day, and it's because we could see all the time spent. And I was looking at that versus Yahoo, right? Yahoo was this massive company, and literally there was more time spent playing solitaire than there was on Yahoo. And my thought was, this was really the genesis of the idea. My thought was, holy cow, there is all this time being spent on this little tiny lame game that's literally been there for 20 years, right? And what that led me to was literally the vision for it was a little bit before its time. It was the App Store on Windows before the mobile phone. Right, but it was clear to me, I was like solitaire is not the best game. It just happens to have the distribution on the desktop. And so my vision was very simple, which is, hey, let's build a whole bunch of games or applications or calculators, right? Basically what the App Store is now, right? Let's move software from this monolithic CD in a store to micro streamable over the internet, monetize via advertising. So that was the vision. We raised some money, put a bunch of our own money in, myself and two other Microsoft guys. And then yeah, scaled up, got a bunch of distribution. Then we hit that first .com funding wall, which was basically the world's biggest break on any startup idea.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah.
And then you found a job at iVillage, and
Oh no, I didn't found, just kind of joined as an executive there. Yeah.
joined as an executive there.
Yeah.
So what happened with ZapSpot? Did you had an exit on that, or
No, ZapSpot. We eventually we had to close it down.
close it down straight
The co
up?
yeah, the code's still living somewhere in one of the
Hard
founders'
disk.
machines.
Yeah.
That's right.
Um, and then Intuit, vice president, web marketing and web commerce.
Yeah.
That's quite exciting. So how did they found you out? And I believe that was the early days of Intuit. What
Uh,
lessons did you learn from your
yeah.
time there?
Yeah, this wasn't super early. So at the time, Intuit was, I want to say, probably a $3 billion revenue company. It's much smaller than it is today. They found me through Recruiter, so kind of professional headhunting recruiter, and at the time they were looking for someone to really help bring their web channel up to current state. So this was back in 2004. But even then, the web was only like 10% of the revenue of the company, and the founder and then CEO, they really understood like this should be more like 40, 50% of the revenue of the business, but they were just very behind. And because I had a deep online background in Microsoft, et cetera, I came on board and really helped them over 4 years. Um, in some ways, yeah, come to current state, but also move even beyond. So, we brought that channel up to, I think when I left, we were like 1.2, 1.3 billion. So not quite at 50%, but getting close. It was on the right trajectory. And it's actually something I'm even more excited about. We pushed a lot of those functions into areas where not only were we not behind, but we started to get references in the forward-thinking book. So like Lean Startup, I think, yeah, there's a reference of the work we did at Intuit around testing. We built like one of the world's best testing engines in terms of online testing and release. This was back in 2004, 2008.
Very
Uh,
impressive.
yeah, no, but that was a great ride. Intuit's a great company. Just some of my best work colleague friends are still from there.
And then Kodak, we all know it as, the company that got replaced by digital photos and phones, smartphones, most precisely. You were in charge of the online division of Imaging Network. How did that go? And what do you have to say on Kodak's decline?
Yeah, so the business I ran, it was known for those of you that might have been around as long as me. It was called O Photo, was the original asset that got purchased by Kodak. They rebranded it to Kodak Gallery, which in retrospect is a bad marketing move. Yeah, I understand why they wanted to put Kodak in, but O Photo had just a great. You could see the traffic loss that they had when they renamed it. It just it went down. Um, no. When I came on board, a photo was a turnaround, or Kodak Gallery was a turnaround, just because at that time it had been the largest photo sharing network, but a company called Flickr came, and then more importantly, um, Facebook, right, had started to chip away at kind of photo sharing. So now the key learning I had was actually kind of interesting. It's contrary to what people think. So Kodak at the macro level didn't miss the digital wave, which everybody, right? That's kind of the common thought is that they just completely missed the boat. And it's actually the exact opposite. So they knew because they were, Kodak was like the Google of its day, right? Back in the 70s, right? It was, Kodak, IBM, AT&T, like these were the marquee companies. So it had the best talent in the world and some incredibly savvy business folks. And those business folks, way back before anything ever happened, were like, oh, digital's going to come eat our film business. And Kodak actually invented the digital camera. Most people don't know that. Like they planted the seeds of their own disruption early on. And some of the stories that I got that were told to me were fascinating. The big one being every year they were expecting digital to start to eat away at film, but film just kept growing and growing, and it just kept growing. And so there was a point in time where they second guessed themselves and they said, crap, maybe we're wrong. Maybe, right? Because we're trying to disrupt. The disruption's not coming. Our film business is healthier than it's ever been. But then, right, then the combination of, multiple things, right, Facebook, iPhone, etc. There was this confluence of things and the deceleration curve when it hit was so fast. There was literally nothing, my perspective as a business exec, there's actually nothing that Kodak could have done at that point to stave off the decline because it was so large and such a profitable stream. The way I describe this to friends is for Kodak to have gotten out of that, it would have literally needed to found Google, right? In terms of a growing revenue stream to offset. So that revenue was going to die and compress. There was really no getting out of it once the flywheel started to go negative. Yeah, but no, they
Surprising.
knew it. They knew it, and they tried to stop it.
And then you sold you contributed to selling your division chapter 11 through to Shutterfly, which I
That's right.
guess led to past it future experience. I mean, in your past future at Evite, which is a greeting card company, online invitations that celebrate it
Yeah.
all. Um, that's quite interesting. That was your first CEO position. So how did that one came about?
So actually, there was the second. So I was the CEO of the Kodak Imaging Network because it was the
True.
clean subsidiary of Kodak. So second role, that actually the recruiters that hired me and found me for Kodak once we sold that business off, basically said, hey, what are you doing next? You've got this interesting opportunity. Evite, it's not a worldwide brand, but it's a very strong U.S. brand. It reaches over 100 million folks in the course of a year in the U.S. So almost a third of the population. It's very well known. It's kind of like the brand Kleenex, where people know it as kind of the de facto online invitation. People
Yeah.
call it an Evite.
Because in Canada, it's like Hallmark cards, and I think Hallmark is like dominant in the online category as well. I know that MailChimp has gone into that category. Now Canva, which is some big competition, I guess. Like Canva is
Hmm.
a really agile company.
Yeah.
What do you have to say for in between like the physical printed side of things via the online side of things? Because me, I grew up online. My world is in this computer, but apparently, for most, and especially people over 50 and plus, they still love to receive physical gifts and even physical photos. So, what has been your experience and what has the data told you on that level?
Yeah, no, it's funny. There's a group, and it's not just the older cohorts. That's definitely the big chunk that still lives in that mental space of yes, if you're going to give someone a card, like don't send them go spend the $7 right on this beautiful. I still do that, right, for my anniversaries and key birthdays, right? I'll do a physical card. But no, people are getting much more comfortable with digital, right, in terms of a form factor. But you'll have between the older generation and also this kind of cool, there's a retro, for lack of a better term, there's like a retro movement in the society where certain things, analog is cool again, right? Record players. You look too young. I don't know if you know what a record player is. Like LPs, right? These are growing, right? They're actually growing on a curve, which is I would have never ever predicted that would be a growing segment of the market. But there is in some ways a weird backlash to digital that's happening. It's not mass, right? The digital is still kind of the lion's share, but yeah, no, it's fascinating to see it play out. Long story short, they'll both have a role.
Yeah.
They will both have a role for sure in the society.
Nowadays, I have this new house and I'm buying decoration. It feels so weird because me, I live on the computer since, like 12. I was addicted to World of Warcraft and played 50
Nice.
to 60 hours a week. And I began making friends there. I was doing business there with the auction house and so forth. So it's just weird now to come back to the physical world and actually caring about physical stuff. I also went through this minimalist phase as a digital nomad that traveled a lot. Um, Tell me about your current company, which is equally interesting. The potential of AI and video is so huge. Why can
Yeah.
I not upload a video in ChatGPT, for example, and ask it to piece these two videos together and then change the background to this and then add this animation to appeal to Y audience? And then we spoke, you and I, about real-time editing. How far are we away from that? And how does that relate to Emovid, which is currently what you're building?
Yeah. So a Movid, to give 2 seconds of background, and unfortunately we're still in our what's called our stealth mode, so I can only describe it at the very high level. In the next hopefully 2 or 3 months after this recording, we'll be able to talk a little bit more freely about it. But at the very, very high level, I can describe what we're going after, which is our goal is to bring video communication, asynchronous video communication into business. So in business today, right, there's three main mechanisms of communication, right? You get together in person, which is wonderful. You do things like this, right, which is right video synchronous, which is actually pretty good, right? So it's either in-person synchronous, digital synchronous, and then you jump down. If you're not doing those two things, you jump down into this huge pit of what's called asynchronous text, right? Email, Slack, etc. And the world basically jumped from what are great communication platforms, right? Because if you think about we have millions of years of evolution that honed us to speak and listen and convey emotion and tone, right? All of these things that come through video, and then we lose it all when we go to asynchronous text. And asynchronous video, right? Just back and forth video where you're capturing, right, all of that emotion. It's an incredible communication transport. It's even at the simplest level, it's just 5 times faster than typing. Like people type around 40 words a minute when all is said and done. You speak at 150 to 200 words a minute. So just out of pure efficiency, right? It should be a transport that's used, but there have been a whole lot of reasons that it hasn't become big in business. And we're going to solve all of those root cause reasons. A lot of those root causes were not solvable before the advent of AI. Um,
I love
so
that
that
graphic
is a high level.
on
That
your
is a high level.
LinkedIn saying like the business impact of AI 10x better, 100 faster, 100 cheaper, and 1 on 10 1 on 0 impossible. That's a nice quadrant or way to view things. I'm also listening to the book of Mustafa Suleiman. I think you shared that one on your LinkedIn, and it's quite fascinating to see the impact that AI is going to have on society. Last
Yeah.
question for you: how can we make sure that conscious capitalism and AI and even AGI are aligned together?
Yeah, that's a deep question, but I think my very simple first answer is we need to put leaders in place that are business citizens and not mercenaries. I use this term mercenary in business to talk about someone who literally is only thinking about the shareholder vector. And there are still those people out in the world, which it's an archaic way of approaching business. Like, and in some ways, it's still very U.S. centric. Like Europe has come a much further along, but we need business citizens who are looking across all stakeholders. I think as long as we have that, as long as we have that in place, they will start to figure out how to solve those thorny or downstream issues because they are very complex. If we don't have citizens running our companies, we're going to run into a whole lot of trouble because they're going to grind forward for profit optimization, come hell or high water, and they might burn the world down in the course of doing that.
And who are these mercenaries? Are these people with deep traumas? Like for example, Trump, I would consider him the mercenary. It's just like win at all costs. You know,
Yeah.
it's win lose. It's I don't care. It's
Yep.
just me. Um, who are these people? Because to me, and I'm about to develop a study on that, specifically billionaires, the ones that do add value to this world and the ones that do not. Is it like 10% of very wealthy people that are mercenaries, and why are they that way?
I don't know the actual percentage. There's some good data actually around companies, what companies are still operating kind of that mercenary quadrant. But no, it's not their fault. I mean, I went to a business school called Wharton, which trains, right, some of the best business execs. And literally, I remember the textbook that I read when I was little, and this was the training, right? It said your job as a CEO is to maximize shareholder return, period, right? So we have an entire generation that was trained by the world's best educational institutions that said your only job as an exec is to maximize shareholder profit, right? This idea of employee balance and customer balance, let alone societal balance, has come really more in the last 20 to 30 years. So part of it is just a retraining, right? Of that's kind of what they know, and people are hard, it's hard to change people's toolkit once they get it working. People definitely do. There are executives that realize, no, that was a bad training. Like I need to operate in a more elevated state of citizenry. And so that's, I call it the back half of my career. The reason I'm running this business and what I'll focus on in the next, 30, 40 years, assuming I'm still alive, right, is helping to elevate business leaders into this tier of citizenship because it's a high leverage point for the society.
I think I'm in between like citizens and mercenaries on my side, and I'm getting my way up to citizens. And let's say that I don't think saints I don't think saints have that much of a good impact,
Yeah.
oddly enough, on the world. Because let's take Patagonia, for example. My goal would just be to maximize the resources that come my way. That is, if I'm a trusted and society aligned individual, and redistribute that out there. I think it's my duty to do that. Granted that most people are not saints, but like citizens, let's call it that way. And I do think that saints are not taking advantage enough of the fact that they are good people, and thus because they're not amassing enough capital and energy, they're not maximizing their impact on the world. What's your quick take on that?
Yeah, no. Patagonia is a great example. I do put it. So my definition of a saint is pretty simple. It's like you are building a business that just inherently is out to do good in the world, right? So every nonprofit, in theory, right, would be a saint, right? Because in theory, the bigger it gets, the more good it generates. Patagonia is in that category, meaning it has refined and tweaked its entire business ecosystem, right, to be green, to be responsible. So no, it's a profit generating engine, but as it gets bigger, it is really on top of all of its downstream impacts, right? I think everyone there can look back and say like, hey, we can feel good about our business getting bigger and bigger in terms of its footprint in the world. So, but I agree, saints are only going to be a small percentage of the world, just by definition. But it doesn't mean that just a normal business that's out doing business can still do great things, right? It can
Right.
still be on top of these downstream impacts. I could build good. I use an example of chairs, right? Hey, we need chairs. Like, you could try to make a stretch and say, oh, that's gonna, I don't know, help your pot. Yeah, what? No, it's a chair. Come on. It's like we need chairs, but you could build good chairs in a way that doesn't pollute, right? That doesn't, decimate forests, that doesn't, whatever the downstream impact of that business would be.
Right. Agree with that. Where can people find out more about you, Victor?
Oh, just at my online website, victorcho.com. And I've got a series of actually 20 plus articles around what I call the fourth stakeholder thinking. So if anyone's kind of interested in that arc, there's a whole, I published that out in 2022, a whole series of articles and content that would, love to have people read and share.
Thank you so much. That was Charles Cormier as your host, and Victor Cho for the CEO Wisdom Podcast.com.